Hello there everyone, welcome to the channel if you're new, and welcome back if you aren't. I'm not gonna lie guys, I'm a little sad. This is kind of the end of the Napoleon series by Epic History TV, and yeah, it didn't really dawn on me until like now in last video that I've been through quite a journey, and I feel like I've learned so much through this series. About many of the things. I came into this series only really knowing about Napoleon, knowing about the Duke of Wellington, obviously, and that was kind of it. I didn't really know. I mean, I knew the general outline and most of Napoleon's, story, but yeah, I feel like walking out of this, I have a much better idea and grasp of the Napoleonic Wars, and I feel like this has been such a great educational journey that has made me appreciate so many people. I mean, heck, I didn't know who the heck Davout was, and now he's like my favorite dude ever. Now I'm like a biggest Davout fanboy. It's just like, that's what I really love about this series, is just, it really helped me grow, and it was really fun. It wasn't boring. And I'm really gonna miss it. I'll talk more about that later. For now, we need to watch this video. We're not done yet. We have at least 42 minutes with my constant pausing and talking, at least 50, over 50, maybe an hour left before this is all said and done. So, yeah, let's just get right into it. Let's watch the final part of Napoleon's Marshals, part 6. If you want to watch this video without my talking or pausing or anything, the link will be down in the description down below. And let's get to it. Let's watch the final part of Napoleon's Marshals.
3. Marshal Berthier.
No one else could replace him.
Louis-Alexandre Berthier was born at Versailles, 10 miles from Paris. His mother served at the palace as a chambermaid to the future Louis XVIII. His father was a colonel in the Topographical Engineers, a specialist corps of military surveyors. Berthier followed in his father's footsteps, joining the Topographical Engineers aged just 13, and was commissioned lieutenant at 17. He proved a talented and diligent staff officer. 10 years later, he accompanied General Rochambeau to America as part of French support to the colonists in their War of Independence, and witnessed the British defeat at Yorktown. By the time the French Revolutionary Wars broke out, Berthier was a brigadier general with 25 years' service, who'd studied and given much thought to the problems of military organization and command. A reputation for outstanding staff work meant his services were in high demand, and he served as Chief of Staff to Rochambeau, Lafayette, and Luckner. But during the Terror, ties to these politically suspect generals put Berthier himself under the spotlight. He was stripped of his rank and not officially reinstated until 1795, when he became Chief of Staff of the Army of Italy. A Chief of Staff led the Staff Section, which was responsible for turning the general's orders into action, by drafting written instructions which were sent out by courier, as well as every aspect of army administration, ensuring efficient movement and supply, and collating reports on the enemy, terrain, roads, and anything else that might affect operations. Berthier, building on recent trends in French staff practice, now developed his own comprehensive staff organization. He established 3 sections: his personal office or cabinet, mostly skilled civilian clerks who handled troop movements, transcribed orders, filed reports, and collated intelligence on enemy forces. His private military staff, made up of aides-de-camp, liaison officers and couriers. And the general staff itself, headed by the First Assistant Major General, also divided into 3 sections. The first dealt with additional troop movements, plus auxiliary services such as hospitals, military policing, prisoners of war, and security of supply lines. The The second section organised the army's camps and billets. The third section was the topographical section, responsible for maps and reconnaissance. The general structure of Berthier's system changed little over the next 18 years and proved uniquely effective at handling the challenges posed by a new era of European warfare. Its chief beneficiary would be the Army of Italy's new commander, Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon also discovered that his chief of staff possessed immense personal qualities, a heroic capacity for work, meticulous memory and attention to detail, and devotion to duty and discipline.
I'm not gonna lie with you guys, I've done research on Berthier before this video, mainly because I received a comment in which someone named him as one of like Napoleon's best, and I was kind of interested into why Berthier was ranked there, because from the main Napoleonic War series, I don't really remember much of Berthier or him doing much, but yeah, the man is just a genius. Like, he basically he helped advance, you know, his chief of staff position is just a chief of staff position in general. I knew a bit about his system and how effective it was. And yeah, he just strikes me as a genius, like a legitimate genius, and like a master of like administration, you know, logistics, organization. Overall, a beyond important part of Napoleon's army, a true pillar, if you would. And the fact, and I think last video Soult was the one who took his position during the Waterloo era because Berthier wasn't willing to return. I feel like that's such a big blow to Napoleon, you know, like Berthier not being there. Like, man, I've come to really love this man, and I definitely have him in like my top 5 Marshals list. And yeah, just beyond essential to the Grand Armée, you know.
Crucially, he had a gift for turning Napoleon's verbal, sometimes vague, commandments into clear, concise written orders that made sense to his officers and later marshals. Napoleon and Berthier established a highly effective working relationship that would last until 1814. It relied on Berthier's complete acceptance of his subordinate role. He played no part in devising strategy, and never challenged or contradicted Napoleon except on points of logistical detail. When a friend queried his devotion to Napoleon, who was an extremely demanding and short-tempered boss, Berthier replied, "Remember that one day it will be a fine thing to be second to Bonaparte."
Wow. He's not wrong about that.
Berthier's hard work and brilliant staff system underpinned all Napoleon's successes in Italy and beyond. They spent so much time together, Berthier was nicknamed Napoleon's wife. He was personally brave too, leading an attack at Lodi and a cavalry charge at Rivoli. But his genius was for staff work and administration, not army command, as he well knew. When he briefly inherited command of the Army of Italy in 1797, he begged Napoleon to return as soon as possible to take over. Berthier played a crucial role in planning Napoleon's Egyptian expedition of 1798, and masterminded his famous crossing of the Alps in 1800, which saw French troops advance almost 100 miles through the mountains in just 8 days. The same year, Napoleon made Berthier Minister of War, putting him in charge of all French military administration. When Napoleon proclaimed his new empire in 1804, Berthier was the first name on the list of new marshals, with seniority over all others. The next year, his role as Chief of Staff, or Major Général of the Grande Armée, was officially confirmed. In the fast-moving campaign of 1805, Berthier's system ensured Napoleon always had up-to-date information about the location and strength of his own forces, as well as the latest reports on enemy movements, from from scouts, spies, and prisoners. Such advantages helped him achieve the stunning encirclement of Mack's Austrian army at Ulm. On campaign, Berthier and the Emperor often travelled together in the imperial coach, working without pause. His workload was immense, but so too were the rewards. Following the victory at Austerlitz, Napoleon made Berthier the hereditary sovereign prince of Neuchâtel and Valengian, with an enormous private income. Over the course of Napoleon's reign, he received endowments worth more than 1 million francs per year from the Emperor, more than any other marshal. Yet Berthier remained a liability as a field commander. In 1809, Napoleon put him in temporary command of the Army of Germany. When Archduke Charles made a bold advance into Bavaria, Berthier's response was hesitant and muddled, and nearly led to Marshal Davout's corps being encircled.
Yeah, I think Berthier is one of those dudes. He has a role, and he does great in his role, and he even recognizes this is what I'm made for. And, you know, there are moments where he's, I guess, like on the field, and he's not doing as well because the man was made to be the chief of staff. He was literally basically born for that role, and, you know, ought to just stick with it. You know, some people are just born to do, like, born to excel at one area, and I feel like he definitely found his place, you know?
Only Napoleon's arrival averted disaster. Returning to his usual role as Chief of Staff, Berthier once more proved his exceptional talents, coordinating the movement of 200,000 men and paving the way for the Emperor's victory at Wagram. The title Prince of Wagram was added to his honours. The invasion of Russia in 1812 was a test like no other for Marshal Berthier and his staff. It required...
Dude, I can't even imagine, like, knowing what he's doing and just how much work and planning and, like, brain power he needed to organize the Grand Army in its normal state. I can't even imagine this Russian campaign. And just how much... Man, how do you not, like, feel overwhelmed? I'm, like, a university student, English major, and sometimes, like, I feel, like, overwhelmed, like, doing, like, staying up to date in my classes and trying to stay on top of things. This man here is, like, leading entire, you know, running, essentially, entire armies as effectively as, like, a CEO or, like, someone running a company, and... Man, I can't even imagine the Russian campaign. That must have, like, put him in a lot of strain. I guess we'll see, but just managing that, I feel like I'd have a nervous breakdown. I feel like I'd be like, oh, it's just like I would collapse. Like, I could not handle that.
Required coordinating the movement of 500,000 troops, the biggest army ever seen in Europe, across a 400-mile front. A simple private is happier than I, Berthier complained. I am being killed by all this work. By August, it was clear the Grande Armée's supply lines were at breaking point, and Berthier was among those who tried to persuade Napoleon to halt the advance at Smolensk. He was ignored.
Yeah, I remember that video, like, Marshals were trying to persuade Napoleon to just halt the advance, and Napoleon decided to keep going. Yeah, arguably one of the times he should have really listened to his marshals, especially Berthier, like, who knows what he's talking about. Like, I feel like, yeah, Napoleon probably should have stopped right there.
As disaster engulfed the army, Berthier continued to perform his duty. By the end of the retreat, he was marching on foot with frostbitten fingers. When Napoleon left the army to return to Paris without him, he wept openly. Despite his own poor health in the wake of the retreat, Berthier worked hard to salvage the remnants of the army.
This poor man, I can already feel he is so overworked. The Russian campaign was, you know, already, I imagine, a nightmare to work on, but oh, this poor dude. I can already feel his overworked mind and just, poor Bethier, man. I'll never get his name right, well, I'll never pronounce it correctly.
And served throughout the campaign in Germany in 1813. By now, Napoleon's enemies had reformed their own army general staffs, partly inspired by Berthier's example. But neither Berthier nor his system was perfect. In May, a confusing order to Marshal Ney contributed to his late arrival at the Battle of Bautzen, and a missed chance to crush the coalition army. Berthier was also notorious for his jealousies and grudges. His pedantic vendetta against Jomini, Ney's talented chief of staff, drove him to defect to the Russians. Berthier must also bear some blame for the disastrous end to the Battle of Leipzig. He knew there weren't enough bridges for the army to retreat safely, but failed to press the matter with Napoleon. When the only bridge out of the city was blown too early, 30,000 men became prisoners. Berthier continued to serve Napoleon faithfully through the desperate defence of France until the Emperor's abdication in April 1814. The restored Bourbon monarchy showered titles and honours on Berthier. The king even gave him an honorary rank in his own guard. Napoleon's return from exile 11 months later put him in an impossible situation, torn both ways by his sense of duty and loyalty. He accompanied the king on his flight to the Netherlands, but was treated with such suspicion by the royal court that he left for his wife's family estate in Bavaria. There, a few weeks later, Berthier fell from a window and was killed.
What?
It was most likely a simple accident, though some believe he killed himself out of guilt or despair, or, less plausibly, was murdered by French royalist agents.
Holy crap. Well, I'm sorry, my brain just froze. I did not expect that. Holy crap, Bethier. You should have joined Napoleon, man. Holy crap. Oh, that poor dude. Oh, poor Bethier, man. Oh, that's so sad. Yeah, he must have felt so torn. I can't even imagine. If he really did off himself, just that guilt that just ate away at his soul. That sucks, man. That sucks. Like, that's sad. He is arguably the man behind the scenes, the pillar of the Grand Armée of the French, and just to see him go like that, I didn't know he died like that. That is so sad. That is so sad. I just assumed he probably lived well with the you know, with the royal monarchy because he enjoyed Napoleon, but I didn't know he just died like that. That's such an awful end to such a great person. I feel so bad for this dude. I feel so bad for this dude, man.
Napoleon had expected Berthier to rejoin him in 1815 and was scathing of his absence. "I have been betrayed by Berthier, who was just a gosling transformed by me into some kind of eagle."
Yeah, that's the thing about the Waterloo area. A lot of Napoleon's, you know, good, competent marshals, not all of them wanted to join back with him. And I think Berthier not being there contributed heavily to Napoleon. Like, no offense to Soult, nothing but respect for Soult, but I don't think anyone could take Berthier's place, man. He was literally irreplaceable. Man. That's sad. I always kind of wish he did join back with Napoleon. You know, obviously the monarchy didn't like him. As soon as Napoleon came back, at least. He was doing fine before Napoleon came back, so I don't know. Poor guy.
But after his defeat at Waterloo, in which mismanaged staff work played an important role, Napoleon conceded, "If Berthier had been there, I would not have met this misfortune." Berthier had none of Murat's glamour, nor Ney's heroism, nor the tactical instincts of Davout, but he was the indispensable marshal, whose brilliant administration and tireless work were the foundation for so much of Napoleon's military success.
Dale used to hide his smile. Now,
it's swishy time.
he uses TheraBreath anti-cavity.
2. Marshal Lannes.
He had truly become a superior being by the time he perished. I found him a pygmy, but I lost a giant.
Jean Lannes was a farmer's son from Gascony, who quit his job as a dyer's apprentice to join the local volunteer battalion in 1792. Energetic and charismatic, he was immediately elected to be an officer by his comrades. The unit was sent to fight the Spanish on the Eastern Pyrenees front, where Lannes proved a brave and active officer. He distinguished himself in several actions and was promoted to command the regiment. Lannes was then transferred to Italy as part of General Augereau's division, where his bold, aggressive leadership won praise from General Massena, and then a dago from General Bonaparte himself, who rewarded Lannes with command of a grenadier brigade in the army's advance guard. A month later, at the Battle of Lodi, Colonel Lannes was first across the river, leaping off the bridge and wading ashore under enemy fire. At the Battle of Arcolay, he was wounded twice, but when he heard the French were retreating, he left the dressing station to lead a fresh attack, which probably saved Napoleon from capture or worse. Napoleon later presented the flag he'd waved at the battle to Lannes, and a special bond was formed between them, based on mutual respect and loyalty. Lannes was promoted to Brigadier General, and in 1798 joined Napoleon's expedition to Egypt. He played a prominent role in the campaign, helping to suppress the revolt in Cairo and leading the assaults on Jaffa and Acre, where he was shot in the neck and only saved from certain death by his men, who carried him back to safety. At the Battle of Abu Qir, Lannes' infantry worked with Murat's cavalry to inflict a crushing defeat on the Ottoman army. While recovering from his latest wounds in this battle, Lannes received painful news from home. His wife had given birth to another man's child. He returned to France with Napoleon in October and divorced.
Dang, man. Josephine and now Lannes' wife? No wonder him and Napoleon were good friends. They could relate to these, to these women who were from the streets, you know? Oh, man. She's for the street, Lannes. You deserve better, man. Get that divorce. You deserve better, Lannes.
His wife not long after. When Napoleon staged his coup of 18 Brumaire, Lannes helped to ensure the army's loyalty. The next spring, Napoleon's army marched over the Alps into Italy. Lannes' vanguard led the way, and at Montebello encountered an Austrian force that outnumbered it 2-1. Lannes was able to win a brilliant victory thanks to crucial support from General Victor. Just 5 days later, his division played a key role in Napoleon's great victory at Marengo. Lannes never forgot a favour. He and Victor remained firm friends. But he also never forgot a grudge, was notoriously short-fused, and quick to perceive an insult. In 1800, Lannes remarried to Louise Antoinette Guernuc, daughter of a senator, with whom he'd have 5 children. He was also appointed commander of Napoleon's consular guard, but he was dismissed after General Bessières helped expose his mismanagement of the budget, for which Lannes never forgave him. In semi-disgrace, Lannes was sent as ambassador to Portugal, a short, eventful spell in which, against expectation, his soldierly manner won over Portugal's Prince Regent. By 1804, it was clear that all was forgiven. Lannes received news that he'd been made a Marshal of the new French Empire, and orders to return to Paris for Napoleon's coronation. The following year, he took command of 5th Corps of the Grande Armée, forming the vanguard for the advance against the Austrian army in Bavaria. Lannes had to work closely with Marshal Murat, a bitter rival since a falling out in Egypt, but they...
Man, I'm never getting the impression that Lannes also... You know, he's mentioned it a few times, especially in this series, that there's a lot of, like, competition and grudges and, like, feuds among Napoleon's marshals. Man, that'd be an interesting, like, frickin' series. I'm just imagining, like, a frickin' reality TV show. Just all of them arguing. Oh, man. You could call it, like, the Marshals or something. Man, you could, like, make a series just based on these guys and, like, their grudges and feuds and probably their cliques. I imagine there were cliques among them. Some got along with others, some didn't. I don't know.
put their differences aside. Together, they bluffed an Austrian commander into surrendering a vital Danube bridge by persuading him that an armistice had been signed. At one point, Lannes even snatched the fuse from a soldier's hand as he prepared to light the explosive charges. The day before the Battle of Austerlitz, Lannes' quick temper got the better of him. He demanded to fight a duel with Marshal Soult, who in his eyes had made him look foolish in front of the Emperor. Soult ignored the challenge.
With the Planet Fitness Black Card, you can bring a friend for free and more.
Yeah, I think what I'm finding really interesting is getting to really know the personalities of these marshals, and I never would have figured Lannes to be such like an angry, sort of hot-headed, quick to anger kind of dude. Like, you know, I guess he kind of shares that with Ney, but yeah, I never figured Lannes for that. I was kind of, I don't know how I imagined Lannes, probably just really like chill and like, you know, like cool with everything, but I didn't know he had so much like feuds with people. That's really interesting. I'm seeing this new side of Lannes, you know? You're really getting to better know who the man was.
In the battle that followed, Lannes' 5th Corps held the left flank against Bagration's attacks, later pushing forward with the cavalry to help take 7,000 Russian prisoners. After the battle, Lannes was infuriated that Soult, and not he, was singled out for praise by the Emperor. Within days, Lannes had resigned his command and returned to France. In 1806, with tempers cooled, Napoleon summoned Lannes to rejoin the army for the war with Prussia. Back in command of 5th Corps, Lannes was as active, aggressive and brilliant as ever. At Saalfeld, he fought the first major combat of the war, routing a Prussian division commanded by Prince Louis Ferdinand. 4 days later, at Jena, Lannes opened the main French attack at dawn, with General Suchet's division in the lead. For 6 hours, his troops were engaged in furious fighting for the villages on the plateau, until finally, the Prussian resistance was broken. By December, the war had moved into Poland. Lannes attacked a larger Russian force at Pultusk, but it was a bloody, indecisive affair. Wounds and fever then forced him to convalesce in Warsaw, and so missed the Battle of Eylau. That spring, Lannes resumed command of the advance guard, as Napoleon sought out Bennigsen's Russian army, hoping to force a decisive battle. When Bennigsen located Lannes' apparently isolated corps near Friedland, he attacked. He expected an easy victory, but Lannes, with support from future Marshals Oudinot and Grouchy, expertly used his troops to fend off the Russians, while Napoleon...
Yeah, I think this is probably the event that sticks out most in my head from Lannes' career, because like I said, in this series, I feel like, you know, every kind of marshal has a moment. I feel like Friedland Lance did an amazing job. Like how, you know, when Bennigsen was approaching, he kind of like obscured his numbers, held him off for the rest of everyone else to join. I feel like Lance really showed a lot of his skill in this battle, especially the opening when he was kind of isolated. So yeah, this is probably the moment that sticks out most in my head when I think about Lannes.
Raced to join him with the main army. Lannes' delaying tactics allowed Napoleon to catch the Russian army with its back to the river and inflict a crushing defeat. The following year, Lannes was ennobled as Duke of Montebello and joined Napoleon for the invasion of Spain, despite suffering a serious riding injury en route. Taking command of Marshal Moncey's 3rd Corps, Lannes routed a Spanish army at the Battle of Tudela, sending the enemy fleeing in 2 directions. He was then given command of the Siege of Zaragoza. Spanish soldiers and civilians defended the city with legendary courage, but Lannes' leadership and methodical house-by-house approach ensured ultimate victory at a high price. Even Lannes was left shaken by the savagery of the fighting, writing to Napoleon, "Sire, this is a horrifying war."
Yeah, I think I remember learning that, like, Lannes, like, a lot of Napoleon's marshals, even in Spain, were, like, straight up traumatized, you know, from what happened, and yeah, Spain was not fun for the French, man.
Napoleon recalled Lannes for the war with Austria in 1809. His Provisional Corps formed the vanguard for Napoleon's 4-day campaign, a series of quick victories over the Austrians that culminated in the Battle of Egmont. Napoleon next needed Regensburg taken quickly, and so, as usual, he turned to Lannes.
Attention, all hands on deck! Popular content creators are making waves in the World of Warships franchise. Create a world.
After the first assault wave was mown down.
Yeah, I'm sad because this is where Lannes like meets his end in this war with Austria.
Lannes' call for volunteers went unanswered. Furious, he picked up a scaling ladder and shouted, "I'll show you that before I was a marshal, I was a grenadier, and still am." As he rushed forward, his aides grabbed the ladder from him, reorganized the men, and led a successful attack. After occupying Vienna, Napoleon ordered his army to cross the Danube in pursuit of the Austrians. Marshals Lannes and Massena led the way across improvised bridges, supported by Marshal Bessieres' cavalry. It was soon clear that Napoleon had miscalculated, and that they faced not just an Austrian rearguard, but the full might of Archduke Charles's army. Massena held the village of Aspern, while Lannes organized the defense of Essling. But desperately needed reinforcements and ammunition were held up, as the Austrians floated obstacles downriver to smash the fragile bridges. Lannes' old rival, Marshal Bessieres, was placed under his temporary command. Lannes sent repeated orders for him to charge the enemy, in language that verged on an accusation of cowardice, and that evening the 2 marshals nearly came to blows. The next day, Lannes' corps led an attack on the Austrian centre, but was driven back by the weight of enemy fire. The French-held villages were under constant, pulverizing bombardment. Around 4 p.m, Lannes' old friend, General Pouzet, was hit by a cannonball and killed in front of him. Lannes, badly shaken, walked off to sit alone for a moment, when a cannonball skipped along the ground and smashed both his legs. Lannes was carried to the rear and placed in the care of the Grande Armée's most famous surgeon, Baron Larrey. Larrey quickly decided that he must amputate one leg. The operation went well, but the wound became infected, and Lannes died 9 days later. Napoleon, who had visited Lannes every day, wept at news of his death. What a loss for France, and for me. Then he wrote to Lannes's wife. The Marshal has died this morning of the wounds he received on the field of honour. My pain equals yours. I lost the most distinguished general in my army and a companion in arms for 16 years, whom I considered my best friend. Marshal Lannes's death was a great blow to Napoleon and the army. He had proved himself an outstanding commander, as brave as Ney, with the military mind of Soult, the marshal who led Napoleon's vanguard in 4 of his greatest campaigns. His remarkable soldiering skills would be sorely missed by the Emperor in the challenging years that lay ahead.
Yes! Davout! 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 Huge Davout fanboy here. Okay, but first let's talk about Lannes. Yeah, Lannes really comes across as very well-rounded in you know, commanding. Like he has bravery, but also like brains, and you know, just overall he's very well established, and you know, definitely worthy of being in the top of Napoleon's list. And you know, he was always there. I think that's what I really remember. He was always there, always doing the best he could, and overall just a beyond impressive person. Like, you know, yeah, his loss is just like the biggest thing I imagine for Napoleon. Not only for the army, but just like emotionally, what a gut-wrenching punch. Like, to witness essentially your best friend killed, like, die in front of you. I just can't even imagine, man. Like, yeah, the Grand Armée definitely wasn't the same after Lannes was gone. Like, you know, he was definitely, like I said, a pillar of the army, and overall just beyond great. Like, I think he's just great. And yeah, I really liked learning more about his character, seeing how his quick temper and, you know, kind of like getting to know the man more personally. I really loved that. I didn't know much about Lannes, so that was cool, you know. Rip Lannes, man. Yeah, that was a sad way to go, man. Well, now we got Davout, who is my favorite marshal. Ever since the Battle of Vienna video, I've been the biggest Davout fan. He is, in my opinion, the best marshal, and according to this ranking, me and Epic History TV are on the same wavelength. Our minds are meeting. At least I think he's ordering the videos to at least the best. I think that's how he meant to order these videos. I don't know. But I think Davout is the best. I think he is beyond impressive. I think maybe the best of an individual command. I consider him the closest to being on Napoleon's level of any of the other marshals. And, you know, I'm willing to die on that hill. That's just like my opinion. I just think Davout is one of the best, and I really wish he had been more around for like the bigger battles, you know. I wish he had been in Waterloo. I wish, you know, he wasn't. I believe he was in Leipzig. He was garrisoning, and he just wasn't there. I just felt like, obviously, maybe I'm overrating, as if he would automatically turn the tide and win all these things would automatically be won if Davout were there. But I really think he would have been very useful in the field. I think the man was made for the field, and I'm sad that, you know, he did so much great things, but yeah, I felt like arguably should have done more, you know, should have been there. I wish he had been there, you know, for more. But yeah, I think this is, I'm really happy that we're ending this Napoleon series with my favorite marshal, Davout, who I am such a fan of, who I think is in the top. I would put him in the top 5 of best military commanders of just the Napoleonic era. You know, the MVP, the Giga Chad, you know, the Prussian Slayer, just so much. Here I am giving Davout titles, but I think he deserves it. So let's just get into it. Let's learn more about Davout as hopefully the man, you know.
1. Marshal Davout.
I agree, Napoleon. He was one of the purest glories of France.
Louis Nicolas Davout was born into a noble family from Burgundy, with a tradition of military service that went back to the Crusades.
Dang.
At 15, he was sent to the military school in Paris, just missing a young Napoleon Bonaparte, who'd graduated a few weeks before. In 1788, Davout was commissioned into the Royal Champagne Cavalry Regiment, but within a year, his vocal support for the French Revolution had got him into deep trouble. He was forced to resign his commission and spent 6 weeks in prison. In 1791, Davout joined a local volunteer battalion and was elected its deputy commander. The next year, France was at war with Austria and Prussia, and Davout soon proved himself a brave, highly organized and energetic officer. He also won praise for attempting to prevent his commanding officer, General Dumouriez, defecting to the Austrians, though he was not successful. The incident did speed Davout's promotion to Brigadier General. But the revolution was now entering its most extreme phase. A new law barred ex-aristocrats from the army, and Davout had to resign his commission once more. A year passed before he was reinstated, with command of a cavalry brigade in the army of the Moselle. He led a series of daring operations against the Austrians, winning particular praise from General Desaix, who became a close friend. In 1798, Desaix introduced Davout to his friend, General Bonaparte. Napoleon was not at first impressed. Davout was aloof, untidy and awkward. Napoleon even described him as a damn brute. But he did trust Desaix's judgment, and gave Davout a command in his army bound for Egypt. It was a tough campaign for Davout, who caught dysentery in Cairo, but he further demonstrated his military skill, winning a series of skirmishes on Desaix's expedition into Upper Egypt, and later leading a successful assault on the town of Abu Qir. Soon after their return to France, General Desaix was killed at the Battle of Marengo, robbing Davout of a close friend and patron. However, Napoleon had been won over by Davout's performance in Egypt. He now promoted him General of Division and appointed him Inspector General of Cavalry. Napoleon also encouraged Davout to marry Amy Leclerc, Pauline Bonaparte's sister-in-law, bringing Davout within the first consul's extended family. It proved a loving marriage and a great source of strength to Davout in the years ahead. In 1803, Davout was...
And it's interesting to see how much of the Marshals actually ended up becoming a part of Napoleon's family, even extended. I did not know Davout was a part of that. That is interesting. I didn't know he was in the Napoleonic family, you know?
Was given command of the camp of Bruges, where troops were preparing for the invasion of England. Here he established his reputation as an exceptional administrator and hard taskmaster, enforcing discipline and regular training, while paying attention to his soldiers' welfare and sacking officers who didn't meet his high standards. In 1804, Napoleon proclaimed a new French empire, and Davout, aged 34, became the youngest of its new marshals. His inclusion was a surprise.
Yeah, I remember learning that Davout was apparently among the youngest or the youngest of the new marshals, and apparently people criticize that. I'm like, you haters. I get it. I guess in the military world, youth can kind of be seen. I mean, I don't know much about the military world, and this is just me completely speculating. But I guess, yeah, the older you are, I guess it tells more of your experience, and they probably saw Davu's youth as kind of like perhaps a telltale sign of, you know, this guy, we have seniority and more experience in him, but man, did Davu prove any of his detractors wrong, because man, he performed head and shoulders above, I think, most people.
Surprise to many, especially as he'd still not commanded anything larger than a brigade in battle. It's very likely that the deaths of Davu's patron, Desaix, and brother-in-law, Leclerc, cleared a path for him.
こんにちは、司令官先輩。一人ぼっちで寂しいの？ならアニメファンや最強軍用機でのバトルを愛するすべての人。
These, I guess, I'm gonna assume Japanese-inspired games. I remember there was one in high school. I knew this dude, and like he had this like mobile game, but like you know like lolis, right, from like Japan. Like there's this weird like war game. Like it was kind of like a how do I say it? Like a warship game, but like the ships were like the head of these lolis, and they were like firing. And I just remember looking, and I was like, "What the heck?" Like, oh man, just looking at this constant like Japanese inspired war game just brought back memories of high school, which I'm not happy about because I hated high school. I really hated high school, but it was like tanks, but like that was weird. I'm gonna have to look more into depth of that game later.
The next year, Davu's troops became 3rd Corps of the Grande Armée.
3rd Corps. So, Davu, man. Davu strikes me as a perfectionist because of his strict discipline, but like, you know, it's kind of like when you have a strict teacher, but when you look back, like maybe like during the time you're with them, you may not fully like it, but when you look back, you're like, you know what? Them being strict really helped bring out the best in me. I don't know, I feel like Davu really brought out the best in those under him, and, you know, arguably created such a great reputation for the 3rd Corps because of the way he conducted himself and expected his soldiers, like a man of high standards, and, you know, you had to be on your... Not to say no one else of the soldiers in any other of the corps weren't at their best, but like I feel like Davu expected everything and beyond from you. I don't know. I'm talking as if I would know, but I feel like, yeah, I feel like Davu definitely expected a lot above and beyond, and he helped bring that out from a lot of people.
And marched east to take on the 3rd Coalition. On the eve of the Battle of Austerlitz, Davu force-marched his corps 70 miles in 2 days, arriving at dawn on Napoleon's right flank. His troops went straight into action, holding off a powerful coalition attack, buying time for Napoleon's decisive move against the enemy centre. It was a remarkable performance by 3rd Corps, soon eclipsed by an even greater feat of arms the next year in the war against Prussia. As Napoleon concentrated his forces at Jena to attack what he believed was the main Prussian army.
And not gonna lie, guys, I know this might sound a bit strange after all the battles we've witnessed, like from Leipzig to Borodino, to even my personal favorite of Napoleon's campaigns, the 6 Days campaign, which I just love. This battle that Davu had, you could watch the video if you want, the Battle of Jena reaction, but it might be my favorite battle of all the Napoleonic wars, because it just shocked me. Like, Davu was there alone, the main force of Prussia shows up, the man decides to hold his ground, beats them, and then just charges them. He's at first he's defensive, then he decides, screw it, and just attacks them and wins. Like, Dude, this is why I call Davout the Prussian Slayer, man. Davout is the ultimate Prussian Slayer. And it still shocked me. I remember being so shocked, and I don't think that shock has left me. It's been, you know, from all these videos, all these things, Davout just beyond impressed me. He won a battle I don't think he should have won, but he did. And that makes him an absolute Giga Chad. He is the Giga Chad of Napoleon's army, you know? That's like, man.
He ordered Davout's 3rd Corps and Bernadotte's 1st Corps to cut off their retreat. But 10 miles north of Napoleon, near Auerstedt, Davout ran straight into the main Prussian army. With no sign of support from Marshal Bernadotte's 1st Corps, Davout's 26,000 men faced odds of more than 2 to 1. Davout's masterful handling of his troops enabled 3rd Corps to repel the Prussian onslaught. Then, his line stabilized, Davout went on the offensive and routed the enemy army.
That is so insane. Davout is a mad lad, man. Man. The Prussian Slayer, dude. Dude, Prussia got humbled so fast in the war of the Fourth Coalition. Like, legit, one corps. Granted, it was arguably the best corps, but one corps was able to basically defeat the main bulk of the Russian army. And not Russian, Prussian. Sorry, the names are so similar, guys. I might slip and just say Russia. But, man, that is beyond impressive. That's like the most impressive thing I saw all throughout this entire series, in my opinion. You know?
It was a stunning victory, won at a high price. 1 in 4 of Davout's men were either killed or wounded. When Napoleon heard the first report, he was incredulous. "Your marshal must have been seeing double," he told his aide-de-camp, making a joke of Davout's spectacle wearing.
Man, I feel like I relate to Davout a lot. You know, I wear glasses now. He wore glasses. He was awkward. I'm awkward. Maybe the reason I like Davout is because I'm starting to sense a kindred spirit. I feel like me and him would understand each other. Oh man, you know, I would really like to visit his tomb. I remember I was doing like random Google research, and apparently Davout has a tomb. Man, I would really love to pay my respects. Like, I want to be like to the MVP, to the Giga Chad. I don't think you can leave anything behind there, but I would still like to go and pay my respects. You know.
When the report was confirmed, he sent a message back to Davout. "Tell the Marshal that he, his generals and his troops have gained everlasting claims on my gratitude." He later gave 3rd Corps the honour of being the first troops to enter Berlin. The next year, at Eylau, Davout's corps again played a pivotal role, trying to turn the Russian flank. When his men were driven back, Davout rallied them, shouting, "The cowards will die in Siberia, the brave will die on the field of honour." This time, 3rd Corps could not break through, but its tenacity helped persuade the Russians to retreat that night. Following the peace treaty of Tilsit, Davout became Governor-General of the new Duchy of Warsaw, where he oversaw the recruitment and training of Polish troops. In 1808, he was ennobled as Duke of Auerstedt. But for all his military prowess, Davout was not a popular figure. Notoriously tough, his troops respected rather than loved him, while several marshals were irritated by his air of superiority and blunt manner. In 1809,
I think he deserves that air of superiority. I think he's earned it. Oh boy, it's gonna be hard for me to criticize Davout. I can't. I'm too biased, guys. I just can't. The Marshals are the problem, not Davout. Davout's fine. He's done no wrong. Oh man.
with war looming with Austria, Davout rejoined 3rd Corps at Regensburg. When Archduke Charles advanced into Bavaria, the army's temporary commander, Marshal Berthier, nearly left Davout to be cut off. As soon as Napoleon arrived, he ordered Davout to withdraw. It was almost too late, but with immense skill, Davout and 3rd Corps were able to fight their way clear and rejoin the army. Davout played a major part in the counter-offensive that followed, known as the 4-Day Campaign, pinning Austrian forces at Egmul, until Napoleon arrived to deliver the decisive blow.
So what is ClickUp? ClickUp is an all-in-one productivity software where you can manage everything and anything related.
A month later, at the Battle of Aspern, Davout and 3rd Corps never made it across the river. The Marshals' role was limited to trying to sort out the crisis at the bridges, until the French were forced to withdraw. When the army crossed the Danube again 6 weeks later, Davout was in his usual post on the right wing. On the first day of the Battle of Wagram, the Emperor criticised Davout for his slow attack. But the Iron Marshal, as he was now known, was saving his men for what he knew lay ahead. The next day, Davout's troops fought off a major Austrian dawn assault, then launched their own attack, gradually driving in the enemy left flank, helping to make Austrian retreat inevitable. Davout and his corps had emerged from another major campaign as heroes. The grateful Napoleon bestowed on him a new title, Prince of Egmul. For a few years there was peace in Central Europe. Davout spent most of it in Hamburg, in his new role as Governor-General of the Hanseatic cities, cracking down on corruption and illegal trade with Britain. In 1812, Napoleon entrusted him with the enormous task of organising the Grande Armée for the invasion of Russia. Davout's 1st Corps alone was 72,000 strong, as big as Napoleon's entire army at Austerlitz. When it crossed the Niemen River in June, its troops were so well turned out that one observer compared them to the Imperial Guard itself. Davout's giant corps was the...
Man, no one more deserving of a huge corps than Davout. And man, like I said, he brought out his corps, whatever he was in charge of, he brought like the best, like above and beyond of his men, and man, the man was just a great leader, dude. Like, I don't know how else to put it. Davout's just a great leader. Very underrated.
Spear tip of Napoleon's invasion. He mauled Bagration's 2nd Army at Saltanovka, but could not prevent its escape. 3 weeks later, his troops were in the thick of the fighting at Smolensk. But Davout's lack of allies among the other marshals began to show. Many were keen to see him taken down a peg or two, including Napoleon's Chief of Staff, Marshal Berthier, and...
Oh man, that pettiness, dude. They're just jealous, man. They're like, man, Davout, look at him. He's like so awesome. Let's watch him get humble. You know, I can't imagine this in war. Like, you're already in this campaign, right? And you need to win, and things aren't going well in the Russian campaign, and then just this pettiness out of nowhere shows up. Like, you'd think, like, in war, everyone would be trying to help each other to ensure that the army performs at its best, ensure that they don't have so much casualties, but just the idea of someone just sitting back, letting this happen, and just kind of being like, serves him right, his air of superiority. What makes him think he's so awesome? Because he soloed Prussia. Man, not gonna lie, guys, anyone who's against Davout you kind of gone down a little bit on my eyes. Man. Either way, I'm just really biased towards Davout, guys. I'm just a huge fan. And I think it might get annoying. If it hasn't annoyed you to this point of the series, I'm so sorry. But, you know, at this point you ought to know that I see no wrong in my boy Davout. I just can't get over that. some of them not wanting to help because they just think, I don't know, they want to see him humbled. Like, what? I can't imagine that. Like, even if you don't like a dude, like, be like, we're on the same side, we need to help each other. I don't know, man. Warfare is weird. I don't know about the modern US military or how, like, the culture is. I just can't imagine that happening. Being like, well, I don't really like that dude. He's fighting. I'm just gonna let him get humbled a bit, you know? I'm just gonna let him, you know, gonna let him struggle a bit, you know, hit him off his pedestal. What the heck? Wait, I need to hear that again. I'm so sorry.
And perhaps even weeks later, his troops were in the thick of the fighting at Smolensk. But Davout's lack of allies among the other marshals began to show. Many were keen to see him taken down a peg or two, including Napoleon's chief of staff, Marshal Berthier, and perhaps even the Emperor himself.
What the heck?
When Davout got into a row with Marshal Murat, whom he regarded as incompetent, Napoleon decided in Murat's favour, giving him one of Davout's divisions.
Dang, no. Even Napoleon jumping in. He's like, Davout, I'm gonna need you to chill out, Davout. Okay? This is called the Napoleonic Wars. This is the Napoleonic era, not the Davout Wars, not the Davout era. You upstage me in Jena, I'm gonna need you to chill out, being awesome. What the heck, man? I have heard that apparently Davout and Napoleon, like, even though Davout's loyal as heck, even more loyal than Murat, yeah, I heard him and Napoleon weren't necessarily friends, and so I guess Napoleon's was much closer to Murat, and so took his side, but man, that sucks. You think, yeah, maybe, I don't know if Napoleon was jealous, per se. I don't know about that. I don't want to claim that, because I don't know, but, man, hopefully jealousy didn't play a part, because, like, man, you would think he'd be happy, like, man, I need more Davouts, like, instead, apparently even Napoleon was in the whole, I want to see Davout a little picked out. I'm like, what? I don't know, if I were there, I'd be like, man, you all need to, I would side with Davout. I'd be like, you all need to be more like Davout. Though I will say, Davout Davout calling Murat incompetent, maybe a little too strong of a word. Murat, I think, in my opinion, is the best cavalryman in the world during this stage of, like, history. I think in the Napoleonic eras, there are a lot of cavalrymen from Ney to Bessières. I think Murat is the most accomplished, in just my opinion, the best of the cavalry guys. And I think maybe, you know, I think especially under Napoleon's supervision is where he was at its strongest. So maybe Davout saying you're incompetent, a little too strong of a word. I don't know why. I guess they just, yeah, Davout wasn't popular, but yeah, maybe a bit too strong with the word. I'll you know, but still, I think Napoleon's straight up crippling Davout like that, and I guess it wasn't pretty fair overall.
On the eve of the Battle of Borodino, the Emperor dismissed Davout's request to outflank the Russian defences. "You are always for turning the enemy," he told him. "It is too dangerous a movement."
Yeah, I was torn during this part, because like I said, I'm a huge Davout fan. But we know how Borodino turned out, was really bloody. And like, again, it's like, Napoleon is Napoleon. He's a genius. The best commander of the era. So it's like, when he says no to something, it's really hard to argue with him, because it's Napoleon, you know? But man, I wonder if Davout had done it. Who knows what would have happened if he had let Davout. But yeah, I'm getting the idea that Napoleon is trying to take Davout down a peg. You know? Napoleon's like, calm down, Davout. I'm the main character of this series, not you. Know your place. You're not the main character. You're a side character in my story. Oh man. Again, I don't know, but man.
In the bloody battle that followed, Davout's corps led the frontal attack on on the Flèche earthworks. The Marshal himself was injured when his dying horse rolled over him, but remained on the field directing the attack, which was ultimately successful. 6 weeks later, the Grande Armée began its infamous retreat from Moscow. The remains of Davout's corps was ordered to form the rearguard, but he was...
I knew that picture was Davout. When he showed it in the video, I was like, that's Davout. I recognize that beautiful bald cranium anywhere. Like, you just can't. You can't miss it, man. You know, you just see it and you're like, that's Davout. You see a bald dude in the Napoleonic era, that's Davout. I recognize him anywhere.
Criticized for moving too slowly. Near Vyazma, a gap opened up, and Russian General Miloradovich pounced. First Corps was routed, and saved only by the quick intervention of Marshal Ney, Eugène, and Poniatowski. Ney's corps took over as rearguard, but when he became cut off at Krasny, Davout was widely blamed for not turning back to rescue him, even though it would have been suicidal. The moment highlighted the gulf in charisma between a marshal like Ney, who was loved by the troops, and Davout, who was not. Davout began the 1813 campaign holding Dresden, but when Hamburg was raided by Russian Cossacks, Napoleon sent him north to organize the city's defense. Exactly why Napoleon kept his best marshal in Hamburg while a decisive campaign raged in Saxony continues to puzzle historians.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, Davout should have been there in Leipzig. Davout should have been there at Waterloo. And I get it. You know, someone will probably say, well, you know, he was organizing the defense of Paris and doing all that. And I get that. Like, I really do, guys. But man, he should have been there. Davout should have been in the field where his talents, I think, would have been best utilized. I think he could have definitely, even if not win, I think he could have helped Napoleon tremendously. And I feel like, I don't know, from what I'm getting, the impression that Davout's biggest fault is simply because he just lacked the charisma of his contemporaries like Ney and Murat, and that he just wasn't as close to Napoleon. And I guess that lack of popularity, that lack of charisma and closeness to Napoleon really kind of undid him. Or, you know, yeah. Like I said, I don't know if Napoleon's jealous, I'm not going to claim that. But I'd be likely to believe that a little. And yeah, I feel like he should have been there, especially in the Waterloo, man. How do you not have the ultimate Prussian slayer? Like, no offense to Grouchy, but man, if Davout had been tasked with handling Prussia, man, Blucher, man, I don't know. I think the Prussian slayer would have once again lived up to his name. This random name I gave him. No one calls him the Prussian slayer except me.
Davout was a stern and effective governor of Hamburg, securing the lower Elbe River and Napoleon's strategic northern flank. He organized a new 13th Corps, and following Napoleon's defeat at Leipzig, withstood a 6-month siege. Davout only surrendered Hamburg in May 1814, after confirmation arrived of Napoleon's abdication.
I love that, man. Even like when he's besieged, he's like, I'm not giving up. I'm gonna hold my ground. It literally took Napoleon being removed from power for Davout to give up, to stop. Love that, man. He has an iron will. I think he's like the real life Stannis Baratheon. I'm a huge fan of the Song of Ice and Fire series, mainly the books, the Game of Thrones show. It was good, but when you really look at the books, like, it's just another level, you know? And like, I don't know, my favorite character of that series is Stannis Baratheon, a man who's a military genius. He's also very strict. He's often compared to Iron, kind of like Davout. He's bold like Davout. He's one of the greatest commanders of the time, like Davout, like... Did George R.R. Martin get... No, I don't think he got inspired by Davout, but man, like, if any of you are interested in, like, the Song of Ice and Fire books, I recommend it. You'll see a lot of similarities with Davout. Maybe that's why I like Davout, because he also reminds me of my favorite character. Dang, I'm learning a lot about Davout and my weird, like, obsession towards him.
But what difference the Iron Marshal might have made at Bautzen, Dennewitz, Leipzig or Long remains a tantalizing what if. Davout was not welcomed into the restored Bourbon regime like other marshals. His loyalty to Napoleon was despised by the ultra-royalists. Instead, he was forced into retirement and put under police surveillance. When Napoleon returned to France in 1815, Davout and Lefebvre were the only marshals waiting to greet him at the Tuileries Palace.
I love that loyalty, man. Like, Davout, I love his loyalty. Like, you know, it's so weird, like, it's weird how people who were closer to Napoleon, like Murat, could turn, you know, but like Davout was just, yeah, a man of principle. Like, he was loyal, man.
But once again, Napoleon gave Davout a role which, in hindsight, seems a disastrous waste of his ability.
Agreed.
Davout was made Minister of War and Governor of Paris. Vital roles requiring a brilliant and loyal administrator, and Davout worked miracles to raise a new army for Napoleon's final campaign. But if Davout, not Grouchy, had commanded the Emperor's right wing in a...
Dude, if Davout had been there, man, I'm telling you, he's the Prussian Slayer. He would have easily murdered Blucher. He would have been like, huh, just another Tuesday. Just slaps Blucher away. Napoleon wins and he becomes emperor forever. No, I'm joking. Except Davout would probably have been best suited, man. Like, I respect Napoleon for recognizing Davout's loyalty. He put him in a position that is important, you know, raising the army, but I just feel like he should have been there. Like, I wish he had been there. I wish he had been in Leipzig. I wish he had been in Waterloo. His talent, man, in the battlefield was needed, especially in the Waterloo era. Like, I get it, Napoleon didn't have all his marshals, and he needed to do what he did, but man, I'm just imagining if Davout had been there, drag up Massena's retired bud, or is he dead at this point? I don't know. Drag up his retired bud, bring Suchet, like, there. Man, Napoleon needed the A-team, especially at Waterloo. He needed to assemble his A-team. He needed to assemble the best. No offense to Grouchy, no offense to Ney, but they proved that there's a lot going on there, and they made blunders. I just feel like Davout wouldn't have made the same blunder that Grouchy did. And, you know, I just wish he had been there, man. I just wish I could see an alternate reality where Davout was there, murdering Blucher and helping secure Napoleon's victory at Waterloo. Granted, I still think France was screwed in the long run because literally, like, all of Europe was mobilizing, but man, I think with Davout there, they could have definitely held off a little longer. I'm sad, man. Just a man of his talent. It feels like it just wasn't utilized, you know? I'm sad.
1815. Who knows what might have been? Following the Emperor's defeat at Waterloo, Davout organized the defense of Paris and urged Napoleon to fight on. Later accepting that he must abdicate, Davout ensured Napoleon's safe passage to the coast and submitted to the Bourbons. The Royalists had promised Davout that his officers would not be prosecuted for their conduct. He was furious to discover these assurances would not be honoured. He also testified on behalf of Marshal Ney, but could not save him from a firing squad. Davout was stripped of his rank and income, though they were restored 2 years later, thanks to the intercession of Marshal MacDonald. Davout shunned court, as he always had. His health was failing, and in 1821, the death of his eldest daughter left him grief-stricken. He died 2 years later of tuberculosis, aged...
Man, I really wish I could go there. I want to go to, like, to his tomb and just be like, pay my respects. You know? Man, I never wanted to pay my respects more than to this man.
53. Davout, the youngest and least proven of Napoleon's marshals, proved the most capable of all. Cool under fire and a brilliant tactician, he was the ideal corps commander in battle. A superb administrator, he was a stern and loyal deputy for the Emperor in Poland and Germany. His main weakness was his severe and blunt manner, which won few friends and left some even wishing to see him fail. Not something they saw from the Iron Marshal very often. So concludes our ranking of Napoleon's marshals. 26 dramatic lives that reflect a tumultuous age. Products of a military meritocracy forged in the French Revolution. Skills honed by 2 decades of war. Their fates entwined in the rise and fall of empires. History may never see such an extraordinary, diverse and colourful collection of military commanders again.
Dude, legit though, like France, I said it before, I think France had the best army in the world at this point, the Napoleonic era. They just were the masters of war, and man, Napoleon had the dream team. Like, so much genius was gathered in one era and in one side. Like, obviously Davout, Napoleon himself, the greatest, arguably the greatest commander of all time, conqueror, and with him Berthier and Lance and Davout, just like so much genius. Literally the A-team of war. Like, dude, like Napoleon and France, just like, talk about an army, the dream army, man. No wonder they were basically the masters of Europe and basically unbeatable for so long. Like, man.
Thank you.
And so ends the Napoleonic series, my friends. This has been quite a journey. I've really enjoyed it, and I've really loved it. I'm sad I probably won't hear much of my boy Davout anymore, but I'll always remember you, bro. Respect. But, man, just like, this was such a fun series. I really loved it. I really enjoyed it. This was, you know, in my opinion, just so awesome. And I really loved mainly learning about, you know, all these great people, all these awesome moments, all these battles. Just like, you know, I feel like I came into this series not knowing much. I mean, I knew the general outline of Napoleon's life, mainly his later life, his battles and whatnot, but like learning about them more in depth, learning about the men under him and the men he fought, it's just like such a cool, epic story and history, time in history that, you know, overall just awesome. I really loved it. I love learning about Davout, who I didn't know who the heck he was before the Battle of Jena video, and then like ending up becoming like such a huge Davout fanboy. Learning about, obviously, without any doubt, the greatest commander of all time, Napoleon himself, and man, the Grand Armée, and just what made it so grand, you know? Overall, a beautiful series, a great series, and, you know, thank you, Epic History TV, for your hard work. Thank you for, you know, bringing history to life. And like I said, I love studying battle tactics, formations, you know, great leaders like Napoleon, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Hannibal. And this series did it for me, you know? I feel like I understand Napoleonic Wars in a deeper way, and I just love it. I've loved every minute of it, and I really just, you know, I'm really sad to kind of see it go. But, you know, what was the saying? All good things must eventually come to an end. And I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you all for watching and coming on this journey with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.